The ceremony was supposed to take 20 minutes. Elowen Vale had been kneeling on the Hall of Ash's black stone floor for 37, and somewhere around minute 15, her knees had stopped hurting. Now they just felt numb, which was probably the Hall's way of being merciful. The Hall was not known for mercy. It was known for erasing people, and Elowen was about to become one of them. Behind her stood Alpha Lucien Morcant and his bride-to-be, Lady Seraphine. Elowen could not see them. She had been instructed to face forward, eyes on the oath stone, hands folded in her lap like a good little Omega who knew her place. But she could smell Seraphine's perfume, expensive and imported, the kind that announced its wearer had never scrubbed ash from under her fingernails or eaten stale bread behind the archive stairs. The scent made Elowen's stomach turn, not from jealousy, from memory. 3 years of stolen moments with Lucien, whispered promises in shadowed corridors, his hands cradling her face while he swore she was his and no counsel could change that. He had kissed her like she mattered, had held her like she was something precious. Then Seraphine's family had arrived with their political alliance, their old bloodlines, their expectations, and suddenly Elowen was an inconvenience, a complication, a name that needed to be removed before the wedding. The head councilman cleared his throat, and the murmuring in the hall died. He was old, silver-bearded, with a face like carved stone, and eyes that had watched too many wolves kneel on this floor. His voice was gentle when he spoke, gentle the way a blade was gentle when it was sharp enough to slide between ribs without catching. Elowen Vale, daughter of no recognized house, Omega of failed shift, ward of moon, ash pack by mercy only. You have been summoned to complete the severance. Mercy only. The words echoed through the chamber, bouncing off walls carved with centuries of pack history. On the western side, names gleamed in silver script, generation after generation of wolves who had belonged, who had mattered, who had earned their place in memory. On the eastern wall there were no names, only scratches. Pale marks where names used to be before the pack decided they were better forgotten. Elowen had cleaned that wall once, when she was 16, and still believed hard work might earn her a place to belong. She had run her fingers over the scratches and thought they looked like claw marks, like the erased had tried to fight their way back into existence. She should have known then, should have understood what Moonash did to wolves who did not fit their vision of strength. By signing the severance scroll, the councilman continued, "You accept removal from pack protection, pack law, pack memory, and pack claim. You will no longer call Moonash home. You will no longer answer to its alpha. You will no longer be owed shelter, witness, or defense." The words were formal, precise, and utterly final. This was not a punishment. Punishment implied wrongdoing. This was simply removal. The pack deciding Elowen's existence was no longer worth the space she occupied. She kept her breathing even, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the archive matron had taught her when the younger wolves made her cry. Do not give them the satisfaction, girl. Wolves respect strength, and if you cannot shift, you had better learn to hold still while they circle. Elowen had learned. She was excellent at holding still. The oath stone sat before her, black and polished, carved with symbols that predated pack law. A bone quill rested beside it, ancient and yellowed, made from the remains of some long-dead alpha and enchanted to make pack law binding. Sign with that quill, and the severance became truth. Her name would fade from the records. Her face would blur in memory. Within a month, most of the pack would struggle to remember she had existed. Wolves had excellent memories for things that mattered. Battles, bloodlines, victories. But the pack bond itself decided what mattered. And if the bond said Elowen did not matter, she would become a ghost while still breathing. "When you are ready," the councilman said, gesturing to the quill. Elowen stared at it. The quill gleamed in the torchlight, beautiful and terrible, waiting to erase her. Behind her, someone shifted. Lucien, probably. She wondered if he felt guilty, if any part of him remembered the promises he had made in the dark. 3 years ago, he had pressed his forehead to hers in the archive shadows and whispered that she was not a mistake. That one day, when his father stepped down and the council stopped breathing down his neck, he would claim her properly, openly, honorably. She had believed him. That was the embarrassing part. Not tragic, not romantic, just embarrassing. There was something uniquely humiliating about realizing your heart had mistaken a locked door for a promise. Lady Seraphine touched Lucien's sleeve. Elowen heard it, the soft rustle of silk against wool, a small motion that was possessive enough for the room to notice and graceful enough to seem accidental, claiming him, marking territory, making it clear who belonged at the future Alpha's side. And it was not the wolfless Omega kneeling on the floor. The pendant against Elowen's chest grew warm. Her mother's pendant, the only thing she had left of Mara Vale, the woman who had died when Elowen was too young to remember her face. It was ugly, according to everyone who had ever seen it, a tarnished circle of ash-colored metal with strange markings that did not match any pack symbol. The archive matron had told her more than once that it was ugly enough to frighten Soup. Elowen had kept it anyway. It was the only proof she had ever had a mother who had not simply abandoned her. Now the pendant was warm, growing warmer, like something inside it was waking. She reached for the quill. Her fingers brushed the bone, and pain shot up her arm like lightning trapped under skin. Elowen gasped, jerking back, and the Hall of Ashes went silent. Not the ceremonial silence of before. This was different. This was the silence of held breath, of something about to break. The councilman frowned. "Are you unwell?" "No." Elowen's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm fine." She was not fine. The quill had burned her. Not physically. There was no mark on her palm, no char, no singe. But something inside her had recoiled from the touch, like her body knew something her mind did not. "Try again," the councilman said. But there was caution in his voice now. Wariness. Elowen reached for the quill a second time, slower, more careful. Her fingers closed around the bone, and the pendant against her chest did not just warm, it burned. Heat flooded through her, down her arms, into her fingertips, and when she pressed the quill to the scroll, the oath stone cracked. Not a hairline fracture, not a small split. The stone shattered down the center with a sound like thunder swallowed by earth, and the erased wall began to glow. Silver light poured from every scratch, every pale mark where names had been removed, brighter and brighter, until the entire eastern wall blazed like someone had set memory on fire. Names appeared in the light, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All the wolves who had been erased and forgotten. And at the center, burning brightest of all, was a name Elowen had never seen. Mara Vale, Ashblood Keeper. The hall erupted. Wolves shouted. Elders rose from their seats, robes billowing. Guards moved toward Elowen, hands on their weapons. But before anyone could reach her, the air itself changed. Heat. Not the warmth of fire or the sun. This was older, deeper, the kind of heat that lived in the earth's bones and made mountains kneel. The doors at the back of the Hall of Ashes slammed open, and every torch in the chamber bent toward the entrance. A man walked through. No, not walked, moved. The way inevitability moved. The way fate moved when it had grown tired of waiting. He was tall, broader than Lucien, dressed in black armor that looked like it had been forged in the same fire that made the world. Dark hair fell past his collar, longer than was practical, and his eyes were molten gold, dragon eyes. The kind that said predator before his scent even reached the room. Cedar, smoke, heated stone, old power that had stopped pretending to be anything else. Every wolf in the hall lowered their head. Instinct. The kind that bypassed thought and went straight to survival. Even the elders bowed, robes rustling as they bent under the weight of a presence that did not ask for respect. It demanded. Elowen, still kneeling with her hand on the cracked oath stone and her blood glowing silver on the altar, could not look away. Cassian Draven, Dragon King, master of Dragon Court, keeper of oaths older than pack law, walked toward her like the room existed only as an inconvenience between where he was and where she sat. His gaze fixed on the erased wall, on the light pouring from the names, on Mara Vale's name burning at the center. Then his eyes dropped to Elowen, and he stopped. For one long, impossible moment, Cassian Draven stared at her like she was a puzzle he had been trying to solve for 1,000 years and had just found the missing piece. Then he spoke, and his voice was a command that bypassed her ears and went straight to her bones. "Stand." Elowen stood. Her legs shook, but she stood. Because apparently when a Dragon King told you to stand, your body obeyed before your mind finished processing the order. Cassian moved closer, stopping just outside the reach of the silver light still pouring from the wall. He studied the cracked oath stone, the glowing blood, the pendant burning against Elowen's chest. Then he looked at Lucian, and the temperature in the room dropped despite the heat rolling off him. "You," Cassian said, and the single word carried enough weight to make Lucian take a step back. "You were planning to sever her." It was not a question. Lucian's jaw tightened. His hand was pressed to his chest, hidden beneath his formal tunic, and Elowen saw pain flicker across his face before he smoothed it away. "This is pack business, Your Majesty. Moon Ash has the right to determine its own membership." "Pack business," Cassian repeated, and somehow made the words sound like an insult. He turned back to Elowen, studying her with an intensity that should have felt invasive, but somehow did not. His gaze dropped to her hand, still resting on the oath stone, and his expression shifted. "Not much, just enough. Your blood," he said quietly, "is breaking through a seal that should not exist." Elowen's throat was dry. "I don't understand." "Neither do I. Yet." Cassian reached out slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a frightened animal, and touched the edge of the silver light. It curled around his fingers, almost playful, and the pendant against Elowen's chest flared so bright she had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, Cassian was looking at her with something that might have been recognition, or dread. "Your name," he said. "Your true name. What is it?" "Elowen Vale." "No." His voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "That is what they called you. What is your name?" Elowen had no idea what he meant. She had been Elowen Vale her entire life. Daughter of Mara Vale, ward of Moon Ash, Omega of No House. Those were the only names she had ever known. But the pendant against her chest was burning hotter, and the silver light was crawling up her arms. And somewhere deep inside her, in a place that had been silent for 24 years, something whispered, "Aeloria." The word barely formed in her mind before the entire hall shook. Not an earthquake, worse. The walls, the floor, the air itself seemed to bend under the weight of a name that had been hidden too long. The cracked oath stone exploded into dust, and the erased wall ignited with light so bright Elowen had to shield her eyes. When the glare faded, every name was visible, blazing in silver script. But one name was larger than the rest, written in ash and fire. Aeloria Elowen Vale, blood claimant. Cassian's breath caught, sharp and quiet, ash blood. Behind Elowen, someone made a sound. Seraphine, her voice tight with something that might have been fear or fury. Lucian's hand was still pressed to his chest, and through the gap in his tunic, Elowen saw a faint red glow, like something beneath his skin was trying to burn its way out. "What's happening to me?" Elowen's voice cracked. Cassian moved then, fast enough that she did not see him close the distance. One moment he was standing at the edge of the light. The next, his hand was on her shoulder, warm and grounding, and the heat in her chest shifted. Not gone. Redirected. Controlled. "Breathe," he said, voice low and steady. "You are not dying. You are waking." Waking. The word should not have made sense, but it did. Because deep in her bones, beneath the fear and confusion and the terrible aching relief of finally having a name that felt true, something was opening its eyes for the first time. Werewolf. She had been told her entire life that she did not have one, that she was broken, incomplete, a body without the beast. But she could feel it now, pressing against the inside of her ribs like it had been waiting 24 years for permission to exist. "Stop this!" Lucian's voice cut through the chamber, sharp with panic. "Whatever you're doing to her, stop." Cassian did not even look at him. "I am not doing anything to her. Someone else did that years ago." His gaze stayed on Elowen. "And I am going to find out who." The head councilman stepped forward, pale and shaking. "Your Majesty, with respect, this woman is pack business." Moon Ash. "Was," Cassian interrupted. "She was pack business. Until you placed her on an oath stone and asked the old law to remove her." The old law answered. He glanced at the glowing names on the wall, at the shattered stone, at the silver light still crawling across the floor. It said no. The councilman opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Cassian turned back to Elowen. Do you want to stay here? The question was simple. The answer should have been too. But Elowen looked at the Hall of Ashes, at the wolves who had spent her entire life pretending she was invisible, at Lucien standing with Seraphine's hand on his arm and pain written across his face like he was the one being hurt. She looked at the erased wall, at her mother's name burning bright among the forgotten, and felt something inside her harden into certainty. No. Cassian's mouth curved. Not quite a smile. Something sharper. Good answer. He extended his hand, and Elowen took it without thinking. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain, and a mark flared to life on her wrist. Gold, not silver. A dragon's claim, written in flame and ash, binding her to him in a way that made every wolf in the hall go still. Claims were sacred, unbreakable, and a dragon's claim on a wolf was something that had not happened in living memory. By dragon law, Cassian said, his voice carrying through every corner of the chamber, Elowen Vale is under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me. It was not a threat. It was a fact, delivered with the weight of 2 centuries of power behind it. Then he turned and walked out of the Hall of Ashes, pulling Elowen gently with him, leaving behind 12 furious elders, 4 trembling guards, 1 cracked oath stone, a wall of glowing erased names, and a former alpha heir whose chest was burning with a secret he could no longer hide. The mountain air hit Elowen like cold water after the stifling heat of the hall. Her lungs ached with it, clean and sharp, nothing like the thick tension that had been pressing down on her for the last hour. She stumbled on the steps, still shaking, and Cassian's hand tightened on hers, steadying her. "Breathe," he said again, quieter this time. Elowen breathed, gulping air like she had been drowning. Her wrist throbbed where the dragon's claim had burned itself into her skin, a mark that would not fade, would not hide, would announce to anyone with eyes that she belonged to Cassian Draven now. Belonged. The word sat wrong in her mind. She had spent her entire life belonging to Moon Ash Pack, and they had repaid that belonging by trying to erase her. Now she belonged to a dragon king she had met less than an hour ago, and she had no idea if that was better or worse. They reached the Eastern Bridge, a narrow span of stone that crossed the gorge between Moon Ash territory and the neutral lands beyond. Below, the forest stretched dark and endless, pine trees swaying in the wind like they were whispering secrets Elowen could not quite hear. Cassian stopped halfway across and turned to face her. "Are you hurt?" Elowen shook her head. "I don't think so. Do you understand what just happened?" "No." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "But I think you do." Cassian's gaze was unreadable, studying her like she was a problem he was still deciding how to solve. Finally, he sighed, and some of the tension in his shoulders eased. "Your mother came to Dragon Court 24 years ago, pregnant, hunted, carrying a blood oath older than most living packs." Elowen's breath caught. "You knew her?" "I met her twice. Both times she was running from people who wanted her dead." He paused, something complicated crossing his face. "She told me she was hiding something. Someone. A child born with ash blood in their veins, and a wolf sealed by people who feared what it could become." "My wolf was sealed?" The words came out hollow. "Someone did that on purpose?" "Yes." The confirmation hit like a blow. Elowen had spent her entire life being told she was broken, defective, a failed shift, a body that could not hold the beast. She had believed it, had learned to swallow the shame and make herself smaller, so the pack would not notice how much space a wolfless Omega was wasting. And all of it had been a lie. Someone had taken her wolf, had locked it away before she ever had the chance to hear it, had condemned her to a lifetime of being incomplete so they could hide what she was. Who? Her hands were shaking. Who would do that? "I don't know," Cassian said, and he sounded angry. "Not at her, for her. But the seal on your blood is not simple pack magic. It is layered, complex. Someone with significant power worked very hard to make sure you never shifted." Elowen's mind was racing. Lucien. It had to be Lucien. He was the only one who had been close enough, who had known her long enough. But why? What possible reason could he have had? Unless he had not done it to protect himself? Unless someone had made him do it? "Seraphine," Elowen whispered. Cassian's expression sharpened. "What about her? She convinced him to sever me before the wedding." She said my presence complicated the alliance. Elowen looked up at him, pieces clicking together in a way that made her feel sick. But what if it was not about politics? What if she knew what I was? What if she has been trying to remove me for years, and Lucien was just the tool she used? Cassian was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. If that is true, then Seraphine's family is very old, very dangerous, and very interested in making sure Ashblood wolves do not survive long enough to claim their power. What power? Elowen's voice cracked. I'm nobody. I clean archive shelves and eat stale bread. What could I possibly have that anyone would want? Cassian's gaze was steady, and when he answered, his voice was gentle in a way that made the truth hurt more. The ability to break a curse that has held my throne captive for 200 years? Elowen stared at him. What? Later. He turned back toward the bridge. Right now, we need to move. Lucien will come after you, either to fix his mistake or to finish what the Severance started. And I would prefer not to fight an entire pack on their territory. Where are we going? Dragon Court. Elowen's stomach dropped. Dragon Court was legend, a fortress carved into volcanic rock, older than pack law, home to power that wolves whispered about but did not challenge. She had heard stories her entire life. Most of them ended with someone dying in creative ways. I can't go there. You can, and you will. Cassian glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. I am not your enemy, Elowen. I am the only reason you are still breathing. Trust me for the next hour, and then you can decide whether to run. It was not much of a reassurance, but it was more than anyone else had given her today. Elowen followed him across the bridge, and with every step, she felt the weight of Moonash falling away behind her. The pack bond, the one that had connected her to Lucien's wolves for 24 years, was fraying. Not gone, not yet, but weakening, like a rope being cut one strand at a time. By the time they reached the other side, Elowen could barely feel it at all. Behind them, in the Hall of Ashes, the erased names were still glowing, and in Lucien Morcant's chest, beneath the formal tunic and expensive silk, a mark no one else could see was beginning to burn. The carriage was waiting at the edge of the neutral lands like it had been expecting them. Black ironwood, reinforced with dragon bone, pulled by two massive horses whose eyes burned ember bright in the fading light. It looked like something that belonged in a nightmare, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Elowen hesitated at the door. Cassian, already inside, raised an eyebrow. Second thoughts? Many. Good. You would be a fool not to have them. He gestured to the seat across from him. But get in anyway. Elowen climbed inside, and the door shut with a finality that made her pulse spike. The interior was warm, lined with dark leather and faintly glowing runes etched into the wood. It smelled like cedar and smoke, like Cassian, and the scent was doing strange things to her focus. The carriage lurched forward, smooth despite the impossible speed, and Elowen gripped the edge of the seat to keep from sliding. Relax, Cassian said, watching her with those unreadable gold eyes. You are safe. I'm in a carriage with a dragon king I met an hour ago, heading to a place I've only heard about in stories. Because apparently my mother made a deal with ancient magic, and my wolf has been sealed by people who want me dead. Elowen's voice was tight. Forgive me if I'm not relaxed. Cassian's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Fair point. Elowen stared at him. He was too calm, too controlled. Like none of this surprised him, like he had been expecting it. You knew, didn't you? Before you walked into that hall. You knew my mother's name was on that wall. I suspected. Why? Cassian leaned back against the seat, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Because 3 weeks ago, the chains around the dragon throne started breaking, one link at a time. Every few days, another one snaps, and every time it happens, my court shakes and the wards falter. He paused. I have been searching for the cause since the first chain broke. Then I felt you. Elowen's breath caught. Felt me? Your blood touched the oath stone, and the throne reacted. His voice was quiet, careful. I knew where you were before I made the decision to come. The mark on Elowen's wrist pulsed, warm and insistent, like it was confirming his words. She touched it without thinking, tracing the golden lines that wrapped around her skin like living fire. What does this mean? She asked, holding up her wrist. The claim. What did you do to me? I bound you to dragon law. It means you are under my protection until the claim is released or fulfilled. Cassian's gaze stayed steady. No wolf can touch you without answering to me. No pack can claim you. No law can harm you except mine. It should have felt like a cage. Another set of chains to replace the ones Moon Ash had tried to put on her. But the mark did not feel like a cage. It felt like a shield, warm and solid, the first thing in her entire life that had stood between her and the wolves who wanted to erase her. How long does it last? Elowen asked. Until you ask me to release you. Or until you die. Cassian's voice was matter-of-fact. Whichever comes first. Elowen swallowed hard. And if I ask you to release me tomorrow? Then I will. He said it simply, like it was not a threat at all. But I would advise against it. The moment my claim lifts, every wolf in Moonash will know, and some of them will come for you. Why? What do they want from me? Cassian was quiet for a long moment, like he was deciding how much truth she could handle. Finally, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, bringing his face closer to hers. You are Ashblood, Elowen, the last living heir of a bloodline that was hunted to extinction 200 years ago because they had the power to break curses older than pack law. Elowen's throat was tight. I don't have any power. I can't even shift. You cannot shift because someone sealed your wolf to hide what you are. Cassian's voice was gentle, which made it worse. But the seal is breaking. I saw it happen in the hall. Your blood touched the Oathstone and the old law recognized you. It will keep recognizing you. And every time it does, more of the seal will crack. And then what? Then your wolf wakes. And the people who sealed it will realize they failed. His gaze was steady, unflinching. They will come for you, Elowen. To finish what they started. Or to use you for the power you carry. Elowen felt the weight of his words settle over her like a shroud. She was not safe. Had never been safe. The severance ceremony had not been Moonash cutting her loose. It had been Seraphine trying to remove a threat before Elowen ever realized she was one. What do you want from me? Elowen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cassian's expression shifted, something complicated moving through his eyes. I want to know why your mother's name is carved into my archive wall. I want to know who sealed your blood and why. And I want to break the curse on my throne before it kills everyone bound to it. And you think I can help with that? I think you are the only one who can. The carriage climbed higher into the mountains, the air growing colder, thinner. Elowen watched the forest fall away beneath them, replaced by sheer cliffs and jagged peaks that scraped the sky. In the distance, black towers rose from the ridge like teeth, sharp and unforgiving. Dragon Court. It did not gleam, it did not welcome, it loomed, a fortress carved from the bones of the mountain itself, older than memory, home to power that had stopped pretending to be anything but dangerous. What happens when we get there? Elowen asked. Cassian's gaze was unreadable. We find out who sealed your wolf. We break the curse on the throne. And then you decide whether you want to burn the pack that tried to erase you, or let them live with the knowledge that they failed. Elowen's hands curled into fists in her lap. That's not a decision I should have to make. No, Cassian agreed. But it is the one you have been given. The carriage rolled through the gates of Dragon Court as the sun dipped below the horizon, and Elowen felt the weight of 1,000 years of history press down on her shoulders. She had thought the Hall of Ashes was the end of her story. She was beginning to realize it had only been the beginning. Dragon Court was nothing like Moonash. Where the pack's territory had been all wooden halls and familiar dirt paths, Dragon Court was carved stone and ancient power. The courtyard was paved in black rock that shimmered with heat, surrounded by walls that looked less built than grown from the volcanic mountain beneath. Elowen stepped out of the carriage, legs unsteady, and nearly stumbled. Cassian caught her elbow before she could fall, his grip warm and certain, and the contact sent a jolt of awareness up her arm that had nothing to do with dragon fire. She pulled away quickly, cheeks heating. I'm fine. Of course you are. His tone was dry, but he did not push. A woman appeared from the shadows at the edge of the courtyard, tall and iron-haired, with a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the walls. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, missing nothing as they swept over Elowen. This is her? The woman asked, voice clipped and no nonsense. This is her, Cassian confirmed. The woman's gaze lingered on the pendant, still glowing faintly against Elowen's chest, then shifted to the mark on her wrist. Something in her expression softened, just barely. Mara's daughter. Elowen's throat tightened. You knew my mother? Everyone in this court knew your mother. The woman's voice was gentle now, tinged with old grief. I am Mara. I keep the records here, the histories, the sealed files that are too dangerous for common eyes. She paused. Your mother came to us seeking sanctuary for you. She disappeared before we could complete the blood transfer that would have protected you. Blood transfer? Elowen echoed. Mara glanced at Cassian, who gave a slight nod. Your mother wanted to bind you to Dragon Court. It would have placed you under our protection, made you untouchable by pack law. But she vanished before the ritual was complete. And then Moonash reported her death, Cassian added quietly. 3 days later, no body, no witness, just a note saying Mara Vale had died of fever and left behind a wolfless infant. The pieces were clicking into place now, each one sharper than the last. Her mother had not abandoned her, had not died quietly like the pack claimed. She had been running, fighting, trying to save Elowen from people who wanted them both dead. And she had failed. Where did she go? Elowen's voice cracked. After she left here? Mara's expression turned sad. We do not know. We sent riders to search, but Moonash territory was closed to outsiders. By the time we found a way in, your mother was already declared dead, and you were in the pack's custody. She paused. We thought you were lost to us. Elowen felt something break inside her chest. All those years, all that time spent believing her mother had not wanted her, had not cared enough to stay. And the truth was so much worse. Mara Vale had cared, had fought, had tried everything to keep Elowen safe, and someone had killed her for it. Come inside, Cassian said, his hand settling on Elowen's shoulder. Not pushing, just there, steady and grounding. You need food, rest, and answers, in that order. I need answers first, Elowen said, but even she could hear how thin her voice sounded. You need to not collapse in my courtyard. Cassian's tone was firm. The answers will still be terrible an hour from now. Trust me. Elowen wanted to argue, but exhaustion was creeping in now that the adrenaline was fading. She had not eaten since breakfast, had spent the afternoon kneeling on stone, and had just learned her entire life was built on lies someone else had buried. Food sounded reasonable. Mara led them through corridors carved from black stone, lit by torches that burned without smoke. The air was warm here, almost too warm, but not stifling. Controlled. Everything in Dragon Court felt controlled, from the temperature to the silence that followed them through the halls. They stopped at a heavy oak door. Mara pushed it open, revealing chambers that were far too nice for someone who had been scheduled for erasure an hour ago. A large bed with dark furs. A sitting area with a fireplace already crackling. Windows that looked out over mountains painted gold by the setting sun. These are your chambers, Mara said. Food will be brought shortly. If you need anything, pull the cord by the door. Elowen stared at the room. You're giving me chambers? You are under the Dragon King's protection, Mara said simply. That makes you a guest of this court. An honored guest, Cassian added. We do not put honored guests in dungeons. We're civilized that way. Elowen almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat and came out as something closer to a sob. The day was catching up to her, all of it crashing down at once. The ceremony, the seal breaking, the Dragon King claiming her. Learning her mother had been murdered and Elowen's entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. It was too much. I will leave you to rest, Mara said, her voice kind. She glanced at Cassian. Do not keep her up all night with politics. I would never, Cassian said, utterly unconvincing. Mara snorted and left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Elowen stood in the center of the room, feeling like she was going to shatter if anyone looked at her too hard. Her hands were shaking. The mark on her wrist was pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The pendant against her chest had finally stopped burning, but she could still feel the echo of heat beneath her skin. Sit, Cassian said quietly, gesturing to the chair by the fire. Elowen sat, mostly because her legs were done holding her upright. Cassian crouched in front of her, bringing his eyes level with hers. Up close, she could see the exhaustion beneath his control. the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. The way his jaw was tight, like he was holding back something that wanted to break free. "You are safe here," he said. "No one from Moon Ash can reach you without going through me first, and I am not easy to go through." "Why?" The word came out raw. "Why are you helping me?" Cassian's gaze was steady. "Because your mother asked me to. Because my throne is breaking, and you are the only one who can fix it. And because leaving you in that hall would have been wrong. 3 reasons: duty, necessity, and conscience." It was more honesty than Elowen had gotten from anyone in years, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow we go to the archive. We find your mother's sealed file and learn who sealed your wolf. Then we decide what to do about it." "And the throne?" Cassian's expression darkened. "The throne can wait. Breaking a 200-year-old curse is complicated, and I would prefer you understand what you are agreeing to before I ask for your help." Elowen looked at him, really looked, and saw the weight he carried, the chains he had been living with for longer than she had been alive. "How long have you been cursed?" she asked quietly. "Since I was 23. His voice was flat, stripped of emotion. "The Devouring House tried to take Dragon Court by force. When they failed, they cursed the throne so it would slowly kill whoever sat on it." He paused. "I have been fighting it for 2 centuries. 200 years. Elowen could not imagine it. The pain, the loneliness, the slow, grinding weight of holding a throne that was actively trying to destroy him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Cassian's mouth curved, bitter and tired. "Don't be. I made the choice to sit on it. I knew the cost." A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant entered with a tray of food bread still warm from the oven, cheese, roasted meat that smelled like heaven, fresh fruit, and set it on the table by the fire. The servant bowed and left without speaking. Elowen stared at the food. Real food. Not stale bread or cold soup scraped from the bottom of the pot. When was the last time she had eaten a meal that was not leftovers from someone else's plate? "Eat," Cassian said, rising to his feet. "I will leave you to rest." "Wait." The word escaped before Elowen could stop it. "Don't go." Cassian paused, something unreadable crossing his face. "Why?" "Because if you leave, I'm going to sit here and think, and thinking is a terrible idea right now." Elowen's voice was small, and she hated how weak it sounded. His expression softened. "Fair enough." He settled into the chair across from her, arms crossed loosely. "Then eat, and I will stay." Elowen ate, and Cassian sat in silence, a steady presence in a day that had been anything but steady. The food was good, better than good, and by the time she finished, the sharp edge of panic had dulled into something she could almost manage. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not letting them erase me." Cassian's gaze was warm, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "You are harder to erase than they thought." Elowen smiled, small and tired, and for the first time since kneeling in the Hall of Ashes, she felt like she might actually survive this, whatever this turned out to be. The archive beneath Dragon Court smelled like old paper and secrets. Elowen followed Cassian and Mara down stone steps, worn smooth by centuries of feet, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Your mother's file is sealed," Cassian said, his voice echoing in the narrow stairwell. "It will only open for blood that carries the ash blood mark." "How do you know I have it?" Elowen asked. "The old law recognized you yesterday. It does not make mistakes." They reached the bottom of the stairs, and Mara pushed open a heavy iron door. Inside, the archive was vast, shelves stretching into shadow, filled with scrolls and books and artifacts wrapped in protective cloth. Mara led them to a glass case in the corner. Inside was a single copper tube, sealed with black wax stamped with a dragon's mark. "This is your mother's file," Mara said quietly. "No one has opened it since she disappeared." Elowen's hands were shaking as she reached for the tube. The moment her fingers touched the wax seal, it melted like butter, and the tube opened with a soft hiss. She pulled out a strip of ash-gray parchment, and symbols crawled across it, rearranging themselves into words she could read. "My dearest Aloria, if you are reading this, then I have failed you. They found me before I could finish the transfer, before I could bind you to Dragon Court and keep you safe from the Devouring House. Your father was a dragon lord, killed before you were born by the same family that hunts you now. They wanted his bloodline erased, wanted to make sure no child of his could ever claim the power he carried. I ran. I hid. I begged Cassian Draven to protect you, but I knew I was running out of time. I sealed your wolf myself, little one. It was the only way to hide you. As long as you could not shift, they would not sense what you are. The devouring house tracks shifters by their bond to their beasts. A wolfless Omega is invisible to them. The seal will break when the dragon throne calls for its heir. When that happens, you must go to Cassian. He is the only one strong enough to protect you. I love you, my ash heart. I wish I could have stayed to tell you that every day. Your mother, Mara Vale. Elowen's vision blurred. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them, hot and bitter and liberating all at once. Her mother had not abandoned her, had not died quietly. She had fought, had made impossible choices to keep Elowen alive, and she had died for it. I'm sorry, Cassian said quietly. He had moved closer without her noticing, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Elowen wiped at her eyes with shaking hands. She sealed my wolf herself, to save me. Yes. Then why did the seal have pack magic in it? You said yesterday it was layered. Elowen looked up at him. If my mother sealed it, why would there be pack magic involved? Cassian's expression darkened. Because someone else added to the seal after your mother died. Someone who wanted to make sure it never broke, even when the throne called. The truth hit Elowen like a physical blow. Lucian. Or someone using him, Cassian said. The seal on your blood has 2 layers. Your mother's work is clean, protective, designed to break when you were ready. But beneath it is something darker. Pack magic twisted with a binding I have only seen in one place. Where? The devouring house. Elowen's stomach dropped. Seraphine. It had been Seraphine all along. She had known what Elowen was, had spent years making sure the seal stayed intact, had used Lucian to keep Elowen locked away until it was time to erase her completely. She knew, Elowen whispered. All those years she knew. Yes. Cassian's voice was cold with barely contained rage, and she used Lucian to do her dirty work. Elowen's hands curled into fists. Lucian had held her, kissed her, whispered promises while tightening the chains around her wolf. He had told her it was love. It had been a cage. I want to break it, Elowen said, her voice shaking with fury. The seal. All of it. I want it gone. Cassian studied her for a long moment. Breaking the full seal will wake your wolf completely. It will also wake the throne's curse. The two are connected now, bound by blood and old magic. Are you ready for that? No, Elowen said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. Something like approval flickered in Cassian's eyes. Then we go to the throne chamber. The throne chamber was colder than Elowen expected. Despite the heat that should have radiated from a dragon's seat of power, the air was sharp and thin, almost brittle. The throne itself sat on a raised dais in the center, massive and imposing, carved from black stone that seemed to drink in light. Wrapped around it were chains. Thick chains, glowing dull red, pulsing with a rhythm that matched a heartbeat. Cassian's heartbeat, Elowen realized. The curse was tied to him, living inside him, slowly crushing him from the inside out. This is what you've been fighting? Elowen's voice was barely a whisper. For 200 years, Cassian's voice was flat. The chains tighten every decade. In another 50 years, they will crush the throne and kill everyone bound to this court. Elowen looked at the chains, at the way they pulsed with malevolent light, and felt something inside her recoil. This was not just a curse. This was a slow execution, designed to torment as much as to kill. How much time do you have? Cassian's mouth curved bitterly. Depends on how fast you work. Elowen walked toward the throne, and the chains reacted immediately. They heated, glowing brighter, like they recognized something in her blood. The pendant against her chest burned in response, pulling her forward. She stopped in front of the nearest chain and reached out slowly. It won't hurt you, Cassian said behind her. The curse only binds those who sit on the throne. Elowen's fingers brushed the chain, and pain exploded through her chest. She gasped, doubling over, as the seal on her wolf cracked. Not broke, cracked. Just enough for something inside her to slip through, hot and furious and alive. Werewolf. It pressed against her ribs, snarling, desperate to be free, and the chain beneath her hand shattered. One link, just one. But the sound of it breaking echoed through the chamber like a bell rung too hard, and Cassian made a sound relief, pain, something in between. Elowen's legs gave out, and Cassian caught her before she hit the stone floor. His arms were steady, warm, grounding her as the world spun. "Breathe," he said, voice low and urgent. "Just breathe." Elowen breathed, shaking, and felt her wolf settle. Not gone, not silent, just waiting. "One chain," she whispered. 11 more to go. Cassian's voice was tight. "But not tonight. You need to rest." Elowen wanted to argue, but her body was done. Breaking one chain had drained her completely, left her hollow and trembling. Cassian carried her back to her chambers, and Elowen was too tired to be embarrassed. She closed her eyes and let herself lean against him, breathing in cedar and smoke and something that was just him. When she woke hours later, it was dark, and someone was in the room. Elowen sat up, heart racing, and saw Cassian sitting in the chair by the dying fire, watching the embers. "You're still here," she said, surprised. He glanced at her. "You broke a chain on a cursed throne. I wanted to make sure you survived the night." "I'm fine. You're stubborn." His tone was dry. "But yes, you're fine." Elowen pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. Tomorrow we figure out how to break the rest of the seal without killing you. And then," he paused, "then we deal with the people who put it there. Seraphine is going to come for me, isn't she?" "Yes." Cassian's gaze was steady. "But she'll have to go through me first." It should not have made her feel safe. He was a stranger, a king with his own agenda, his own curse to break. But the way he said it like it was a fact, not a promise, made something in Elowen's chest loosen. "Thank you," she said quietly. Cassian's expression softened. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be long." Elowen lay back down, and Cassian stayed in the chair, a silent guardian, until she drifted off. And for the first time in her life, Elowen's wolf was not silent. It was waiting, waiting to wake fully, waiting to fight. And waiting, she suspected, for the moment when she would finally stop running and start hunting the people who had tried to erase her. 3 days passed in Dragon Court, and with each one, Elowen felt more of the seal crack. "Not all at once. That would have killed her," Cassian said. The seal was too deeply rooted, too tangled with her blood and bones. Breaking it required patience, precision, and more pain than Elowen thought she could survive. But she did. Every morning, Cassian took her to the throne chamber. Every morning, Elowen touched another chain, and another piece of the seal shattered. Her wolf grew stronger with each break, louder, more insistent. By the 3rd day, she could feel it moving inside her, pacing like a caged animal that finally remembered it had claws. On the 4th morning, Elowen woke to shouting in the courtyard. She threw on a robe and rushed to the window, looking down just in time to see a group of wolves in moon ash colors standing at the gates. Guards surrounded them, weapons drawn, and at the center of it all was Lucien. Elowen's stomach dropped. She found Cassian in the throne room, already dressed for battle. His armor was black dragonbone, polished to a lethal shine, and his eyes were colder than she had ever seen them. "They're here," Elowen said unnecessarily. "I know." Cassian's voice was flat. "Lucien is demanding to see you. He claims pack law gives him the right to speak with you before the severance is finalized." "The severance failed," Elowen said, the oath stone shattered. "He is claiming it was interrupted, not failed. Technically, he is correct." Cassian looked at her. "You do not have to see him. I can send him away." Elowen's hands curled into fists. Part of her wanted to hide, to let Cassian handle it, to never see Lucien's face again. But another part, the part that had spent 3 years believing his lies, wanted answers. "I'll see him," she said. Cassian's expression darkened. "Are you certain?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "Then I'm coming with you." They met Lucien in one of the smaller receiving rooms, a space designed for negotiations that might turn violent. Stone walls, no windows, one door. Cassian stood at Elowen's side, arms crossed, radiating enough controlled menace that the 2 guards who had escorted Lucien inside looked ready to bolt. Lucien looked terrible, His face was pale, drawn like he had not slept in days. His hand was pressed to his chest, hidden beneath his tunic, and Elowen could see the faint glow of red light seeping through the fabric. The seal, the one he had helped strengthen. It was burning him now, reacting to Elowen's presence. "Good. Elowen," Lucian said, and his voice was hoarse. "Please, I need to talk to you." "Talk," Cassian said flatly. Lucian's jaw tightened. "Alone." "No. This is between Elowen and me. Nothing is between you and her anymore," Cassian interrupted, voice cold enough to freeze blood. "You tried to erase her. You failed. She is under my protection now, which means anything you say to her, you say in front of me." Lucian looked at Elowen, desperation written across his face. "Please." Elowen took a breath. "It's fine. I want to hear what he has to say." Cassian did not move. "I'm not leaving." "I'm not asking you to." Elowen met Lucian's gaze. "Talk." Lucian swallowed hard. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I need you to understand, I was trying to protect you." Elowen laughed, sharp and bitter. "Protect me? You sealed my wolf, Lucian. You helped Seraphine trap me for years. You stood behind me in that hall and let them try to erase me. That's not protection, that's betrayal." "I didn't have a choice," Lucian's voice cracked. "Seraphine's family, they would have killed you if they knew what you were. The only way to keep you safe was to make sure you never shifted, never gave them a reason to look at you twice." "So you lied to me." Elowen's voice was shaking now. "You told me you loved me. You made me believe I mattered. And the whole time, you were tightening the seal that kept me broken." "I did love you," Lucian said desperately. "I still do. That's why I'm here. The seal is breaking, Elowen. I can feel it. And when it breaks completely, Seraphine's family will know. They will come for you. And if you're here, if you're bound to the Dragon King..." He stopped, breathing hard. "You'll start a war." "Good," Elowen said coldly. Lucian stared at her. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Elowen stepped closer, and Lucian flinched. "They took my mother. They took my wolf. They took 24 years of my life and filled them with shame for something that was never my fault. So yes, Lucian, if breaking this seal starts a war, I will gladly light the match." "Elowen, get out! Please just listen." "I said get out!" Elowen's voice cracked, and the pendant against her chest flared with light. The seal on Lucian's chest reacted instantly, and he cried out, stumbling back. Cassian moved between them, fast and lethal. "You heard her. Leave. Now." Lucian looked at Elowen one last time, pain and regret written across his face, and then he turned and left. The door slammed shut behind him, and Elowen sagged against the wall, shaking. Cassian was there instantly, steadying her. "Are you all right?" "No," Elowen said honestly, "but I will be." Cassian's hand was warm on her shoulder. He was right about one thing. When the seal breaks completely, Seraphine's family will know, and they will come. "Let them," Elowen said. "I'm done running." Cassian's expression shifted, something like pride flickering in his eyes. "Then we prepare for war." On the 7th day, Elowen broke the final chain. It was not dramatic. There was no explosion of light, no earth-shattering sound. The chain simply shattered beneath her hand, and the curse that had held the dragon throne captive for 200 years dissolved like smoke. Cassian gasped, doubling over, and Elowen caught him before he could fall. "I've got you," she said, echoing the words he had said to her so many times. Cassian's breathing was ragged, but when he looked up at her, his eyes were clear for the first time. "It's gone. The curse is gone." And inside Elowen, the seal broke completely. Her wolf surged forward, no longer caged, no longer silent. It filled her chest, her limbs, her entire being, and Elowen gasped as power flooded through her veins. She was not broken. She had never been broken. She was Ashblood, the last heir of a line that had been hunted to extinction, and she was done hiding. "They're here." Mara's voice came from the doorway, urgent and sharp. "Seraphine's family, the devouring house. They're at the gates, and they're demanding you surrender Elowen or face the old contracts." Cassian stood, steady now, the exhaustion of 2 centuries lifting from his shoulders. He looked at Elowen, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust. A promise neither had spoken, but both felt. "Tell them," Cassian said, voice cold and clear, "that if they want her, they can come and take her. If they think they can." Elowen smiled, sharp and fierce. "And tell them I'm not the wolfless Omega they tried to erase. Not anymore." Her wolf howled inside her, finally free. And the devouring house was about to learn what it meant to hunt a beast that had finally learned to hunt back. The battle came at dawn, but the night before was worse. Elowen could not sleep. She stood at the window of her chambers, watching the devouring house forces set up camp in the valley below, and felt her wolf pacing inside her chest. Restless, hungry, ready. "You should rest," Cassian said from the doorway. Elowen did not turn. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see my mother. I see all the names on that wall. All the people Seraphine's family erased." She paused. "I see what they tried to do to me." Cassian crossed the room and stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him but not touching. "You are afraid." "Yes, good." His voice was quiet. "Fear means you understand the stakes. Only fools walk into battle without fear." Elowen looked at him. "Are you afraid?" "Terrified," Cassian said simply. "I have spent 200 years protecting this court. If I fail tomorrow, everyone bound to Dragon Court dies with me." He paused. "But I am more afraid of letting Seraphine win. Of letting her continue hunting children like you, like your mother." Elowen's throat tightened. "What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then I will be strong enough for both of us." Cassian's hand found hers, warm and steady. "You are not alone in this, Elowen. You have never been alone. You just did not know it." Elowen's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not now. Not when tomorrow she would need every ounce of strength she had. "Stay with me tonight," she said quietly. "Please, I don't want to be alone." Cassian's expression softened. "I'm not going anywhere." He stayed, sitting in the chair by the fire while Elowen lay in bed, and for the first time since her wolf woke, she felt safe enough to sleep. The battle came at dawn. Elowen stood on the ramparts of Dragon Court, fully shifted now. Her wolf form silver-gray with ash-dark markings that matched the pendant she still wore around her neck. Beside her, Cassian stood in his full dragon form, black scales gleaming like polished obsidian, gold eyes fixed on the valley below. The devouring house forces gathered in neat rows. Wolves, witches, mercenaries bound by blood contracts. And at the center, on a white horse that seemed too pure for someone so poisonous, sat Lady Seraphine. She looked up at the ramparts, at Elowen standing tall and unbroken, and her perfect face twisted with fury. "Elowen Vale!" Seraphine's voice carried on the wind, amplified by magic. "Surrender yourself, and your Dragon King lives. Refuse, and we will raze this court to ash and scatter your bones across the territories as a warning." Elowen's wolf rumbled deep in her chest, and when she spoke, her voice was layered with power. "You tried to erase me, Seraphine. You failed. And now you will answer for every name on that wall, every life you stole, every child you hunted in my mother's name." Seraphine's smile was cold and beautiful. "You are one girl with a newly woken wolf. What do you think you can do against an army?" Elowen's eyes burned gold. Dragon-touched from weeks of walking beside Cassian, breathing his air, breaking his chains. When she smiled, it was all teeth. "Let's find out." Cassian launched first, a roar that shook the mountains, and Elowen followed, her wolf leaping from the ramparts with the kind of grace that came from finally being whole. The battle was chaos. Blood and magic and the screaming of wolves who realized too late that they had hunted the wrong prey. Elowen fought like something feral, like all the rage and pain of 24 years had been distilled into claws and teeth, and a fury that would not be contained. She tore through the devouring house's front lines, heading straight for Seraphine. The lady tried to run, tried to use her magic, her contracts, her centuries-old power. But Elowen was Ashblood, the last of a line that had been born to break curses and chains, and the kind of magic that thought it could cage the wild. When Elowen's jaws closed around Seraphine's throat, the lady finally understood what she had woken. Not a wolfless Omega, not a broken girl, a beast that had been sleeping, waiting, gathering strength for the moment it could finally hunt. Elowen did not kill her. That would have been too quick, too clean. Instead, she dragged Seraphine back to Dragon Court, bloody and broken, and threw her at the feet of the council that had once tried to erase Elowen's name. "This," Elowen said, her voice still layered with wolf song, "is what happens when you hunt the wrong child." Seraphine knelt in the mud, defeated, and Elowen stood over her with all the weight of her bloodline behind her. "You should have let me stay erased," Elowen said quietly. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Seraphine to face Dragon Court justice. The battle was over. The devouring house was broken. And for the first time in 200 years, the Ash bloodline had a living heir. Lucien came to her that night, one last time. The guards let him through because Elowen had given permission, and because she needed to do this, needed to close this chapter properly. He looked different without the weight of his father's expectations on his shoulders. Smaller, somehow, more human. "I'm sorry," he said, and for once, he sounded like he meant it, for all of it. "I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong." Elowen stood by the window, not looking at him. "You were wrong about a lot of things, Lucien. You were wrong when you thought love meant control. You were wrong when you thought hiding me was the same as protecting me. You were wrong when you stood behind me in that hall and let them try to erase me." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it, but I need you to know I did love you. Maybe not the way you deserved, but I loved you." Elowen finally turned to face him. "Love should not hurt the way you hurt me, Lucien. Love should not make you smaller. It should not require you to hide parts of yourself to be acceptable." She paused. "You taught me that. Not by doing it right, but by doing it so terribly wrong that I finally understood what I deserved." Lucien's eyes were red-rimmed, and she realized he was crying. "What will you do now?" Elowen glanced back at Dragon Court, at the lights burning in the windows, at Cassian waiting for her in the hall outside because he had promised not to leave her alone with the man who had hurt her. "I'm going to live, really live, for the first time. I'm going to help rebuild the Ash bloodline. I'm going to make sure no child ever goes through what I did. And I'm going to be happy, Lucien, despite everything you did to prevent it." Lucien nodded slowly. "Moonash is reforming. The council that tried to erase you has been dissolved. We're writing new laws, ones that protect Omegas, that prevent severance ceremonies like yours from ever happening again." He swallowed hard. "It won't undo what was done to you. But maybe it will save someone else." "Good," Elowen said quietly. "That's a start. Will you ever forgive me?" Elowen considered the question. Really considered it. "Maybe. Someday. But not today. Today I'm still angry. Still hurt. Still learning how to be whole after spending so long being broken." She met his gaze. "And that's okay. You don't get to rush my healing just because your guilt is uncomfortable." Lucien flinched, but he nodded. "You're right. You deserve time. You deserve everything I couldn't give you." "I do," Elowen agreed. "And I'm finally starting to believe it." Lucien turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I think he's good for you. Cassian. I think he sees you in a way I never did." "He does," Elowen said. "He sees all of me. And he's not afraid of it." Lucien left, and this time Elowen did watch him go. Not with longing, not with regret, but with the quiet satisfaction of closing a door that should have been closed years ago. When he was gone, Cassian appeared in the doorway. "Are you all right?" "I am," Elowen said, and meant it. "I really am." 3 months later, Elowen stood in the archive beneath Dragon Court while Mara carved her mother's name into the Wall of Honor. Not the erased wall, where shame and secrets lived, but the Wall of Heroes, where the names of those who had sacrificed everything for Dragon Court gleamed in eternal silver. Mara Vale, Ashblood Keeper, Protector, Mother, Dragon's Friend. "She would be proud of you," Mara said quietly, stepping back to admire her work. Elowen touched the pendant at her chest, the one her mother had left her, now polished and gleaming instead of tarnished and forgotten. "I hope so." "She would," Cassian said, appearing at her side as he always did these days. "You broke a curse, defeated the devouring house, and reclaimed a bloodline that was supposed to be extinct. Any mother would be proud." Elowen leaned into him, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. Over the past 3 months, something had shifted between them. The dragon's claim on her wrist had changed, no longer just protection but something deeper, something chosen. They had not named it yet, had not put words to the way they gravitated toward each other, the way her wolf settled when he was near, the way his dragon hummed contentedly when she walked into a room, but it was there, growing stronger every day. The first group of Ashblood descendants arrive next week, Mara said, consulting her notes. We found 17 families across the territories who carry the bloodline. Most of them don't even know what they are. Their wolves have been dormant for generations. We'll teach them, Elowen said. We'll show them they're not broken, they're just sleeping. Cassian's hand found hers, warm and steady. And you'll lead them? I will. Elowen looked at him. If you'll let me stay. Something soft moved through Cassian's expression. Elowen, this has been your home since the moment you broke the first chain. You don't need my permission to stay. I know, Elowen smiled, but I wanted to ask anyway. Mara made a sound that was suspiciously close to a laugh and excused herself, leaving them alone in the archive. Cassian turned to face Elowen fully, his hand still holding hers. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Oh? The claim on your wrist, the one I placed when I pulled you out of the Hall of Ashes. He paused. It's changed. You've changed it. Made it something more. Elowen's heart kicked in her chest. I have. Why? Because it stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like choice. Elowen met his gaze steadily. Because somewhere between breaking chains and fighting battles, I stopped seeing you as the Dragon King who saved me and started seeing you as Cassian. The man who stayed with me when I couldn't sleep. The man who carried me when I couldn't walk. The man who saw me at my most broken and didn't try to fix me. Just stayed. Cassian's eyes burned gold and his voice was rough when he spoke. I stayed because leaving was never an option. From the moment I felt your blood call to the throne, you became part of this court. Part of me. He lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to the mark on her wrist. I should ask your permission too. The claim has changed because I changed it as well. Made it a bond instead of a protection. If you want me to undo it? Don't, Elowen interrupted. Don't undo it. I want this. I want you. Cassian's breath caught, and then he was kissing her, one hand cradling her face while the other pulled her closer. The kiss was warm, certain, everything Elowen had learned to want. It tasted like cedar and smoke and coming home after a lifetime of wandering. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. My queen, he murmured. My king, Elowen whispered back. And for the first time in her entire life, Elowen's name, her true name, Elowen Vale, did not feel like something the world could take away. It felt like something that had finally come home. The archive was quiet around them, filled with the names of the honored dead and the living who had fought to join them. Mara Vale's name gleamed on the wall, a permanent reminder of the mother who had sacrificed everything. And beside it, Mara had already begun carving a new name, one that would sit in the place of honor, right next to the Dragon King's own. Elowen Vale, Ashblood heir, Cursebreaker, Dragon's Heart. It was not an ending, Elowen thought as Cassian pulled her close again, as her wolf hummed contentedly in her chest, as the mark on her wrist pulsed warm and alive. It was a beginning, and this time she was writing her own story,